Hi people, Marino Ravenberg here again as always and as usual. Yeah, it's astrology series time again, and as the header indicates, I'm going to discuss astrology and health this time. Bear in mind that when I bring up the word health, I've already discussed mental illness, so obviously that is off the table. In case you were unaware of it, check my previous videos, okay? Astrology and mental illness is the name of that video. I'm going to be doing physical health today. So when I say health, notice that I'm specifically not using the word mental or illness, or let alone both. When I say the word health, I'm exclusively referring to physical health. So one's physical health. So that's what we're going to discuss today. What are the indicators, planetary constellation wise, that someone is born under? What are indicators of good health as well as bad health? Someone's good physical health, great physical health, even in bad health. By default, the elements that deal, when I say elements, I simply mean planetary elements. The elements that deal with someone's health situation, by default, that's Virgo, or like as I like to say, Virgo. Virgo's house, so the sixth house, and any placement in either Virgo or the sixth house gives away health status. Also, the sun and the first house up to a limited extent. The first house is the house that Aries rules over. So that's all you need to keep in mind, okay? The zodiac sign Virgo, the astrological house that it rules over, so the sixth house, the sun, and last but not least, the first house up to a limited extent. In order of importance, because again, the sun does deal with health, but only up to a limited extent. By default, Mercury is still the one that deals with health, and specifically its subservient zodiac sign Virgo. Now, let's get down to it. By default, there's not a lot to say. This video is going to be short compared to the others. There's not a lot to say here. Like I said before, any planet that you have, essentially, or celestial body in either Virgo or a house that Virgo rules over is bad news. Especially if that planet is afflicted. Is news. But if that planet is afflicted or celestial body is afflicted, then it's bad news in general. Unless the rest of the constellation, in terms of placements and properties, negates that and overrules it, then yeah, it's bad news. It spells bad news for one's physical health situation. Bad news by default, really bad news, is either Uranus or Saturn in Virgo or any of its houses. Uranus by default deals with sudden changes, okay? They can be good or bad. And Uranus is unfortunately afflicted in Virgo. Uranus functions well, elementally speaking, in astrological water signs. So Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And adversely, it functions really bad in earth signs, elemental earth signs. So think of Virgo, Capricorn, and Taurus. Uranus does not function well in any of these in general. I'm sorry. Now, Uranus in Virgo or Uranus in the sixth house, unless Uranus is really well aspected, so like I said, Uranus has a good deal of other aspects. Uranus is well aspected to a bunch of other planets that clearly indicate that the person is in good health, then the person will suffer from erratic health issues, okay? Think of someone that gets suddenly sick or has a sudden onset of some freaking disease or illness that can be either mundane or semi-mundane in nature. So something a bit more serious-minded. That's what I mean with semi-mundane. And the disease disappears as quickly as it afflicted the person. That's what it stands for. Okay, it's simply a matter of connecting the dots. Like I said, Uranus, all you need to think about when in this context with Uranus is sudden change. And then if Virgo comes into play, either Virgo or the house that Virgo rules over the sixth house, then yeah. Then generally speaking, it's bad news. Again, like I said, all of a sudden someone gets an onset of the flu, a case of the flu, a sudden case of the flu, a sudden case of a sudden fever coming on and whatnot. And then after a couple of days, it disappears right away. And generally speaking, the person has difficulty, even when going to a physician, the person has difficulty having a proper diagnosis done, you know. Generally speaking, if it's something that can't be explained medically on a physical level, then a physician or a doctor will simply attribute it to stress or anything else that you've got going on in your life that is taking a toll on you, etc. Think about a bad cough as well. It just goes on and on. That's what Uranus and Virgo produces, or better said, conveys, gives away. Someone that's born under Uranus and Virgo or the sixth house, yeah, not good. Let alone if Uranus has bad aspects. Think about an opposition or a square, you name it. Next up, Saturn and Virgo. Like I've said so many times already, Saturn is the bad guy in general. Saturn indicates what your quote unquote weakest link is. And Saturn and Virgo in general doesn't have to be bad, because Saturn functions, generally speaking, well in earth signs, elemental earth signs, so Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. But you do need to take care though, because it's not a black and white issue. Saturn can be in Virgo, but if Saturn is even in the slightest afflicted, or Saturn is having a hard time in some way, shape, or form, let alone if it's heavily afflicted, then yeah, you're going to suffer health problems your entire life, physical health issues. Okay, you're going to be the kind of person that will make a regular trip or regular trips to your doctor or a hospital, either Saturn in Virgo or in Virgo's house, the sixth house. Also bad news. Now for the rest, the Sun, the Moon, and Neptune are also bad news, especially if they're afflicted. The Sun in general also deals with health. So people that were born under a strong Sun, for example, yeah, these people rarely suffer health issues. But if someone was born under, for example, the Sun in Virgo, and the Sun has negative aspects and whatnot, for example, the Sun is opposed to the Moon, etc., then yeah, the person, or square Neptune or opposed Neptune even, then yeah, there will be health issues or health complications. The same thing if the Sun is in the sixth house, the house that Virgo rules over. Now, if the opposite is the case, the Sun has great aspects and whatnot. Imagine the Sun being in Virgo and the Sun being in the first house. Remember what I said. The first house also deals with health up to a limited extent, and the Sun is strong in the first house because it's a fire sign, Aries. The Sun is strong in fire signs, so Aries, Leo, which it rules over, and Sagittarius. And it's weak in air signs, so Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. So if the Sun is in Virgo, generally speaking, the Sun is neutral in Virgo. But the Sun in Virgo in the first house, for example, I think I've come across it once that someone was born under that placement, and the Sun was conjunct the ascendant. Oh boy, someone like that is going to be a powerhouse physically. Someone like that will rarely get sick, and even if they do get sick, they get the flu, fever, any mundane run-of-the-mill illness, they recover rapidly in like a day, less even, in hours. That's how strong these people are. So yeah, that's just to give you a change of things, okay? Doesn't just bestow poor health. Strong health is also indicated. Any positive aspect from and or to the Sun is good. Any positive aspect, I repeat, any positive aspect from and to the Sun is good. So if the Sun is generally speaking strong, the Sun is in a fire sign, and the Sun has good aspects, then generally speaking the person will be in good health. Okay. Now let me see for the rest. Let me see. Yeah, the Moon. If the Moon is afflicted, even if the Moon is strong, it doesn't really say a lot. But if the Moon is afflicted, the Moon is in Virgo, for example, oh boy, really bad news as well. Same thing as if the Moon is in Virgo's house, the sixth house. The Moon is strong in all water signs, so Cancer, Scorpio, and since the Moon rules water as an element, and Pisces. And the zodiac sign that opposes Pisces, all the water signs are opposed by earth signs, obviously. So Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. So yeah, the Moon functions at its weakest, essentially, generally speaking, at its weakest, absolute weakest in Virgo and Capricorn. So imagine someone that's born under the Moon in Virgo. Like I said, if the rest of the chart negates it or indicates something else, then yeah, it's not specifically health related. But if, for example, the Moon is in Virgo's house, in the sixth house, or the Moon is in Virgo, let alone the Moon being further afflicted by other negative aspects, then yeah, it's bad news. Generally speaking, someone like that will be will suffer health issues or health complications, or just overall health complications across the board. Especially if the Moon is in the sixth house, if the Moon is in the Sun's in Mercury's house, or Virgo's house, better said, that Mercury rules over. Now, an afflicted Neptune can also bring about health complications. If Neptune is, like I said, same thing. That applies to the moon, applies to Neptune in terms of rulership. Neptune is strong in all water signs and weak in all earth signs. So if Neptune is, for example, in Virgo, or Neptune is in Capricorn, and Neptune is in the 6th house, for example, then yeah, even if Neptune were to be in a neutral sign, like a fire sign or an air sign, like Neptune in Gemini, but Neptune is in Virgo's house and Neptune has negative aspects, then yeah, health complications will be there. Nothing tremendous, but still mention worthy, specifically hypochondria. That's the thing with Neptune. Someone born under an afflicted Neptune will display hypochondriatic, if that's the correct way to say it, hypochondriatic ailments. And for people that don't know what hypochondria means, that simply stands for people that have like an unrealistic fear that they have a serious medical condition or that they're at high risk of becoming ill. Okay, think about someone that's delusional to the point where they think constantly that every time they cough, every minor sign they display in relation to just a physical mishap, a simple cough. They automatically, one simple cough and they automatically start losing it, and they think that they need to go to the doctor because they might have some kind of chronic illness. You name it, they might have pneumonia due to the fact that they literally just cough once, that's all. Or just throwing up once and they immediately think that they need a thorough checkup and blah, 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 blah. See what I'm talking about again? Okay, what I've discussed in my prior astrological videos. Neptune deals with your mentality. Specifically mentality from a spiritual perspective or a point of view. Whereas Mercury, for example, deals purely with your thought processes. It deals with your mentality, but in the way of thought processes and whatnot. The moon deals with your mentality, but from an emotional perspective. So your emotional state of mind and your emotional, how you process your emotions. Yeah. So that's why Neptune has this, okay? This is a mixture, essentially, a very rare mixture of mental illness, but very minor with physical illness, honestly, if any is applicable or applies. Again, in this case, Neptune simply gives away that someone like that, someone that's a hypochondriac, is simply someone that's delusional to the point where they obsess over their physical health. They think every time something simple happens, okay, so a very minor onset of that is potentially indicative of health problems, physical health problems, that immediately they need to sound the alarm, so to speak, and they need to go under the knife, go under the operating table, etc., etc. Yeah, bad news in general. Other than what I already mentioned before regarding the sun, another aspect that bestows great health is also the sun conjunct the ascendant, also known as the rising sign. People that are born, let's just say people that are born during sunrise or near sunrise, so when the sun rises in your location, your respective location, yeah, and you were born at that time, then that's great in general. That's why the ascendant is also called the rising sign. So if the sun is conjunct the ascendant, then yeah, that's a good that's a good indicator of physical health or being in good physical health. Like I said, most good aspects from and or to the sun are good for health. And the opposite can be said of the opposite, of course. If the sun has bad aspects to any other planet, that generally speaking, it says something about the person's health. Doesn't have to be the case, but if any of these aspects, okay, for example, the sun is opposed Uranus, then, and Uranus, for example, was in Virgo, then yeah, it simply stands for erratic health issues and whatnot in general. I'm going to close things off now. Before I go, something unrelated, something neutral. For people that don't know what the ascendant and the midheaven is, we're going to keep it real simple for you. I already explained what the ascendant is. The ascendant, that's why the ascendant is called the rising sign. The ascendant is simply the first house cusp. It's the ruler of the first house, the house that Aries rules over. So Mars rules over, essentially, with Aries as its subservient zodiac sign. All you need to keep in mind, really simple in layman's terms, is that the rising sign or the ascendant simply stands for sunrise astrologically. So, for example, people that were born near sunrise, let's just say in your location, the sun comes up at 7 a.m. or at 6 a.m., and you were born between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m., then yeah, you were born near the rising sign. So your sun or the sun is going to be near the ascendant. The sun is going to be near your rising sign when you're born. And midheaven simply stands literally for just that, midheaven. That's where the name comes from. The 10th house cusp that rules over the 10th house, which is ruled by Saturn, and specifically its subservient zodiac sign Capricorn. It's literally called midheaven because it simply represents the highest point in the sky. For example, if people that are born near noon, people that were born, for example, let's just say noon is by default 12 p.m., and people that were born between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., that means that the sun was close to the midheaven when you were born. Okay, where the sun is going to be exactly, that all depends on general factors involved. But the sun is going to be near midheaven. And that's essentially it. Bye-bye.